Islam family, let me rise upon the seven and give all praises to the great God and honors to his holy prophet, honors to our holy prophet, my holy prophet, Noble Drew Ali, Yalhaj Sharif Abdul Ali, that is. And give honors to my Moorish kin once again, here, there, and everywhere. And therefore, honors to all of you who are continuously honoring yourselves by being yourselves. I want to come forth before you, Moorish kin, once again with a grand measure from the treasures as we are dealing with the 7 degrees of unfoldment and self mastery according to our teachings in our Moorish Holy Quran. And this deals with the neophyte as he traverses and circumnavigates to pass through the 3rd degree, our brotherhood test known as faith. I want to start by reading from this special documentation of what took place, and then we'll expound on it briefly. And it states, Adon Mashikumi, the Logos waited 7 days and then was taken to the Hall of Fame, a chamber rich with furnishings and lighted up with gold and silver lamps. The colors of its ceilings, decorations, furnishings, and walls were blue and gold. Its shelves were filled with books of masterminds. The paintings and the statues were the works of highest art. And Yehoshua was entranced with all this elegance and these manifests of thought. He read the sacred books and sought the meaning of the symbols and the hieroglyphs. And when he was absorbed in deepest thought, a priest approached and said, behold the glory of this place. My brother, you are blessed. Few men of earth so young have reached such heights of fame. Now, if you do not waste your life in search for hidden things that man can never comprehend, you may be a founder of a school of thought that will assure your endless fame. For your philosophy is deeper, far than that of Plato, and your teachings please the common people more than those of Socrates. Why seek for mystic light within these antiquated dens? Go forth and walk with men, and they will honor you. And after all these weird initiations may be myths, and your Messiah hopes but illusions of the hour, I would advise you to renounce uncertain things and choose the course that leads to certain fame. And thus the priest, a demon in disguise, sang siren songs of unbelief, and Yehoshua meditated long and well on what he said. The conflict was a bitter one, for king ambition is a sturdy foe to fight. For 40 days, the higher wrestled with the lower self, and then the fight was on. Faith rose triumphant. Unbelief was not. Ambition covered up his face and fled away. And Yehoshua said, the wealth, the honor, and the fame of the earth are but the babbles of the hour. When this short span of earthly life has been measured out, man's bursting baubles will be buried with his bones. Yes, what man does for his selfish self will make no markings on the credit side of life. The good that man for other men shall do becomes a ladder strong on which the soul may climb to wealth and power and fame of Allah's own kind that cannot pass away. Give me the poverty of men, the consciousness of duty done in love, the approbation of Allah, and I will be content. And he lifted up his eyes to heaven and said, my Father Allah, I thank thee for this hour. I ask not for the glory of myself. I fain will be a keeper of the temple gates and serve my brother man. Again was Yehoshua called to stand before the hierophant. Again, no word was said, but in his hands the master placed a scroll on which was written faith. And Yehoshua bowed his head in humble thanks and went his way. As we can see here, family, in this special drawing, the neophyte, the initiate, in this special test of faith, a test in which we will all come into contact with at some point in our journey of proclaiming our consciousness, our journey of being conscious. This test that this neophyte went through in initiation is a very important test, because most of our people end up failing this test. See, we're not talking about preaching. We're not talking about taking our people somewhere into a spookism. This is the reality of a mastermind going into the chambers of his own mind, into the chambers of his own heart, and being initiated into the consciousness of his own divinity. You see? So we're dealing with a test of faith that this neophyte or this student adept had to go through. And notice it says that he was surrounded by books of masterminds. It didn't say one book of a mastermind, but books of masterminds. There are many books of masterminds that are on the manifest right now in this new era and time, for this is the age of information. Some people like to call it the age of Aquarius. We call it the age of the enlightened Buddha. In my circle, we call this also the age of benevolence, the age of Shunetta. Shu in ancient Kemet has to deal with the holy breath. So this is the age that the breath is made manifest through man, because man is a vessel of the Creator himself. So nevertheless, he was in a place that was filled with books of masterminds. And it states that there were works of the highest arts here, and that he was entranced with this elegance and everything that was around him. You know, this is special adept for initiation. You know, he was really intrigued by these things that he's seen around him. You know, more often like us, if we go into a particular place, we ain't got to go nowhere. Let's just think about Kemet. The world is intrigued by the pyramids. The world is intrigued by the monuments, which most people call the wonders of the world. And so it is, this is special neophyte for initiation was intrigued by what he's seen. And it says that also he read the sacred books and sought the meaning of symbols and the hieroglyphs. So if you're dealing with, you know, him being in this special state, and then there are symbols and the hieroglyphs are on the manifest Moorish kin, that's a grand drawing in and of itself. That's a very powerful measure. Now, when he read these things, if he had not the knowledge of the language, then how would he comprehend it? Most of our people think that when you look at the hieroglyphics, like the images behind me, that you're dealing with alphabet. But this is a metaphysical language that has never really been given to the common people. It was a language that was meant for the priests. Reading hieroglyphics is no different than observing nature, observing creation. When you go out your front door, this is what we call listening to the great God, because that's what they say Meronetta is what? The language of God. So the language of God is not written by the hands of man with pens per se, but is written in your essence, written in your nature. You see? And peace and love, brothers, you know, that are listening, brother Mustafa and brother Poet. And give honors to you, brother Freeman L. Honors. So when we understand that the consciousness of that special language has to do with understanding the nature of yourself and understanding the nature of everything in creation, then we get a clear conception of what Meronetta is. Because many people think that the Europeans have translated Meronetta. They did not translate Meronetta. In fact, Meronetta on a high degree can't even be translated in the human sense of this is special measure, but the teachings can be transliterated. So this is what was demonstrated when you deal with the aspects of Yehoshua, that neophyte that was sitting in that room contemplating on the meanings of these symbols and these hieroglyphs. It said when he was absorbed in his deepest thought, again the priest approached and said, behold, my brother. He told him, you blessed, He said, few men of the earth so young has reached such heights of fame. So now there you go, speaking to his ego. He's whispering to his mind. He's basically trying to blindside him with his own intellect. And this is all taking place within oneself. It's a thought of doubt that is within one's own mind, telling them, okay, you're already in a fixed position. You already are part of a particular body of discipline, but your consciousness is telling you, okay, this ain't enough. I can go and create my own thing. I can build my own thing. And this is one of the reasons, and this is key, not just dealing with this individual measure here, but this is one of the reasons why we as a people have been set back so much. Because when we establish something, it is always someone that raised up from among us that think they can do better than that which was already established. And a lot of time we fall by climbing. It's almost dealing with, I like to call it the Eden syndrome. Where they like to speak of, a serpent, so-called, and the serpent is no more than the lower self, speaking to one in the garden, telling one, if you eat of this tree right here, you're going to become like God. You're going to be God, right? When in all actuality, one is and was already God. You see? So this is how, the matriculation of the mind and Maya and illusion demonstrates. So we have to get beyond that meiotic illusion. And I'm saying meiotic illusion, you see, and get with the meiotic infusion into the truth and consciousness of oneself. So nevertheless, he was in this place, and now he being told that basically, you got all the wisdom, you got all the understanding. What you have in knowledge is greater than that of all your teachers and everybody that came to teach you. And so when you go to thinking like this in your consciousness, that's when you begin to fall by climbing. You intend to try to excel, as they say in a lot of the scriptures or whatever the case may be. We ain't no Bible thumpers. They like to say, well, Lucifer said he would exalt his throne above the heavens. This is simply talking about the ego trip within oneself. You see? So it went on to say again, because I want to emphasize and drive home this hammer truth, on these points. Now, if you do not waste your life in search for hidden things that man can never comprehend, you may be the founder of a school of thought that will ensure your endless fame. That's what's going on in the conscious community right now. You see, most people are saying that everything on the manifest is so-called quote-unquote hokum pokum. Everything on the manifest is basically spookism. They are taking on the ways and the characteristics of Eurocentric thought patterns, the Eurocentric mindset. They're thinking like the European, the slave master. You see, the slave maker, the slave breaker, the slave holder, the slave catcher. And all of this is within you, not outside of you, as we spoke of before. So here we have this special test of faith. Remember, this is the brotherhood test, the third adept degree in regards to being able to obtain the scroll of faith. Now, most of the time we hear faith, we think that this is dealing with some religiosity. We think that this is dealing with some Bible thumping. When we hear faith, we think this is dealing with some type of religious cult or whatever the case may be. But when you use the concept of faith on a higher level, you're talking about being faithful to your higher state of consciousness. You're talking about being faithful to the morals and the principles that are represented by the consciousness. In ancient Kemet, we called it harmony, truth, balance, right order, and justice. You see? So if this is the case, and this is the highest state of consciousness, then we fall by chasing after that consciousness of a European. Or some people like to call him a white man. Some people like to call him a pale man. You see, some people like to call him whatever they call him. Nevertheless, he does not have our conscious mindset in him. So how can he teach you anything of consciousness when he is not conscious? This is the European. You see, but yet and still that mindset has become embedded in us, so much so to where we are following him into the hole or the pit of a serpent, and we don't even know it. So anyway, again, this is dealing with mastery of the self-mastery, Moorish Ken. And it stated, now he named them. He said, now if you know, you don't waste your time, for hidden things, searching for these things that man can never comprehend, and you may be a founder of a school of thought that will ensure endless fame. We just spoke on how this has spawned many different schools of thought and theology and all this, right? But then he went on to emphasize, say, for your philosophy is deeper than that of Plato, and your teachings please the common people more than that of Socrates. See, this is the mindset that one has. When they get into the state of ego, and they were a part of a body of discipline, but they wasn't disciplined enough to stay fixed in what it was that they were supposed to be carrying out along the lines of a mission statement. So they deviate from the path in search of what they already have. Most of us deviate because we feel that we are lacking something. And that's the first mistake that we make. You see, we begin to think that the grass is greener on the other side, right? And so when you go into the aspects of dealing with being faithful to your higher state of consciousness, you forget all of this. Everything is up for grab. It's open game now, right? And so you begin to go into a state where you are spawned into a whirlwind of conflict that can't be told in words, because you the only one got to deal with it. And don't nobody else want to hear what you're dealing with, but you're dealing with it because you choose to be unfaithful to your higher state of consciousness. Not a man outside of yourself, not a woman outside of yourself. You refuse to be faithful to your higher state of consciousness, and you fall by climbing. So this is what this initiate, this neophyte, was going through in this initiation process. It wasn't somebody outside of him that was whispering to him. It was his own ego. So it went on and said, why seek for mystic light within these antiquated dens? Go forth and walk with men, and they will honor you. See, that's the main measure. Everybody want to be, basically established upon some throne, and receive some form of recognition for the works that they do. If you know anything like me, we can deal with the manifest. I deal with contract work, right? So in the earlier stages, doing the type of work that I do, I felt like this work was supposed to be acknowledged. But nevertheless, what ended up happening is that the work was never acknowledged by those outside of me. And so when they didn't acknowledge it, I felt like, man, okay, these people are unappreciative. They don't care nothing about what I'm doing. And so it'll make you take on a whole nother mindset if you ain't careful. So then you get to a level of unfoldment and you say, well, all right, I'm going to come into a special drawing to where I'm going to deal with doing what I do for the great God, for my family. And when you begin to look at it that way and you're not looking at it on the basis of what you're trying to do, to appease to man or make man feel some type of way, then you'll come into a clear conception of what it is you do, and you don't even acknowledge, you just do the work. And you work more efficiently that way. You begin to unfold so much to where you be like, wow. And you don't even know what you've done along the way. So the ego begin to speak to one and make one believe that they are trying to obtain something that they don't have. And in fact, this is what's luring them off of the path of coming into a higher state of consciousness. As it has been stated, if the fish knew that a hook was hidden therein, would he take the worm? Would he take the bait? So we have been normally those who take the bait, right? So that's the problem with us. So let us go forth again. It says, and after all, these weird initiations may be myths, and your Messiah hopes but illusions of the hour. Ain't that the language that you hear most people that demonstrate as so-called Darwinians, atheists, these Darwinian followers, and that mindset that has come a part of our people now, because they're starting to talk about evolution without the process of a force or a source being there to begin or initiate this process of evolution. Our people are taking hold to that as special thought. You see? But when it comes time to ask them, well, if evolution began, then who started the process? That's when everybody dumbfounded. You see? But nevertheless, that's the mentality we have. And after all these weird initiations may be myths, and Messiah hopes, but illusions of the hour. In other words, ain't nothing real. Everything that's been brought forth is a lie. This is what they teaching now. They're saying, well, this man wasn't real, that man wasn't real, and if he was, show me his tomb. Well, all you got to do when you look at Kemet is look at the monuments. The monuments are a representation of the entombment of the wisdom, knowledge, and understanding that was brought through our ancestors. That's something that can't be denied. You see, and even carbon dating can't keep up with us when it come down to dealing with tracing our ancestry back, because we always manifested. Every time they think they found some ancient, they find something more ancient. Every time they think that they found something in the heavens or cosmology, that manifests on the planetary level, and that's it, more is manifested. And so is the same when you get into the aquatic realm of the waters. Things are still coming on the manifest. So they call this evolution. Evolution, without one that is able to demonstrate the execution thereof. Do that make any sense? If we look at creation itself, everything in creation that has a beginning started from a particular seed. Be it a tree, be it a seed of life from whence we come to manifest. Be it everything in creation has its own seed and produces its own kind. These things are not just by chance and by, strange happening, so to speak. The scientists are now speaking of the God code. And I got to keep using the hammer of repetition on this measure, because if they're talking about a God code, now scientists are recognizing deity. And if they are recognizing deity by default, that destroys the evolution theory. But nevertheless, these are the mindsets that, some of our people are beginning to adopt from that European. So, and this is just like what we hear. I would advise you to renounce uncertain things and choose the course that leads to certain fame. So this is what our people have been doing. You see, they have bucked and tried to go against everything that they consider uncertain, because they seeking fame. They want some money. They want to make money off of your ignorance. They want to make money off of your weakness, your pain. Ain't that something else? Your people trying to package your pain, put it on the market, the black market, and give it back to you by means of conscious stimulation. That's a sad situation right there, but most of our people are falling for it. So it went on. He said, and thus the priest a demon in disguise. So now we know what it is that's talking to one. After this conflict came in, there was a bitter fight dealing with King Ambition this neophyte, this initiate, he rose up in faith triumphant, and unbelief was not. And that ambition had to flee from this special one. You see? And he was basically saying that I ain't here to be a selfish individual. I'm selfless, not selfish. That's what it was being demonstrated. And basically, I'm going to be faithful to my higher state of consciousness, and I refuse to obey the shadow of that consciousness, which is the lower self, my ego. You see, that mighty Goliath that has to be slew or slain with the scimitar of consciousness. You got to cut him off. You got to behead that type of thinking. You see? So we have to keep this in mind when we think about these adept degrees and these brotherhood tests. Because again, it's not someone outside of you. It's the mastermind that is within you. It's the hierophant that is within you that will give you your scroll of self-certainty, of self-mastery. When you overcome those things that are necessary to be overcome. And also don't think that you won't be tested with the same test in a different way. And all this does is keep your scimitar of higher consciousness sharp. Because you need to know every which and way, every direction or angle that enemy, that ego, that lower self is coming from. Again, don't be flanked off by looking outside of yourself. Pay attention to the self. If man was asked what to study, it's the self. You see? And if you ask again what it is that he must study, it will be the self again. So we give honors to you, family, again for another measure of being able to bring it forth to you all. And I just say gratitude. It's my pleasure to bring you this information. We are revealers of the light. That's what hierophants are. Hierophants reveal the light. We don't conceal the light. We're giving it to you, the truth. We're not telling you about a spook God outside of the self. We're telling you we don't serve gods outside of the self. We're telling you that God is in the essence of your being. We're telling you that God is that higher consciousness within you. God is the hierophant that is within you, guiding you through deific will. If you acknowledge that deific will. And what is the link? That golden cord of love. So I just say peace, love, and law. And Uncle Jet Sanel, in the comedian language, that means life, health, and prosperity to you all. Shimotepu.